Most of us focus on stopping behavior, but here's the secret. It's not the outburst that defines the future relationship. It's what happens after. Repair is where trust is rebuilt. And if we miss that, we miss the moment that matters most. If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. Hello and welcome back to the Able to Care podcast. I'm your host, Andy Baker, and today we're talking about something that often gets overlooked in many of the settings that I go and visit, teach and support, and that is the repair. We often put so much energy into spotting either early signs of escalation and preventing escalation, or maybe de-escalating in the moment, but the real learning, the real connection happens afterwards, when the storm has passed and the person feels safe again. We have a relational response flow that we work through people in scenario training and things like that to get them to really understand the full journey doesn't finish once we feel we've made the situation safe. It's about what happens afterwards, about the rebuilding and the repairing of the relationship moving forwards. That's where true learning occurs. That's where connection building can also actually make a real difference. So today we're going to explore why that matters more than we realize it does, and the research that backs it up as well, and practical ways to turn post-incident moments into powerful teaching and trust-building opportunities. So we are going to be exploring why the brain learns best when it's in recovery, not in crisis, and how repair builds trust and resilience across children's, adults, and older people services, and what effective repair conversations look like in practice. So first off, I want you to think about maybe an argument you've had with somebody in your past. And straight after the incident, all you could think was they were in the wrong and you were in the right. And it wasn't until you took some time to calm down and reflect, you were able to recognize that maybe you did make some mistakes. Maybe you shouldn't have said what you said. Maybe they had some good points. But in that moment, you were unable to think like that. In the moment, you were right, they were wrong. There was no other way of looking at it. Now, all adults, I can imagine, listening to this, have experienced that themselves, and yet we deny it in anybody else. We don't recognize the benefit of that process, or we take it we take it for granted that they should just know how to do that. Other people should just do that. Remember what I say? Anytime you say should or shouldn't, it would be nice if they did. It'd be great if they knew how to. It'd be wonderful. If we're saying should, we're creating a value statement, an expectation based on our reality, not universal truth. So when we look at the science of it, we have to remember the neuroscience of memory. People remember the end of an interaction more strongly, the recency effect. Then that means the recovery phase shapes the whole story of the incident. Whatever happened last related to that incident is how it is framed in somebody's mind. Now, this is one of the problems that people have with memory, isn't it? We tend to think that memory is like this video camera, this recording. This is an exact replication of what I said in that moment. However, a bit like this recording, it's going to be edited. It's going to be changed. Every time I pass it on to my editor and he kind of watches a bit and he'll change bits. That's exactly what happens with memories. We take out the bits we agree with. We take out the bits we don't. Every time we recall a memory and relay it down, we change it. So actually the repair afterwards can help make sure that that's being framed right. If I'm going away from an incident and all I'm focusing on is a negative interaction or what I did wrong or what you did wrong, that's going to affect the way that I remember the whole relationship, the whole interaction. Whereas if I get a chance afterwards to repair it, to talk about it, to reflect back on it, without judgment, without criticism, but through exploration, then I can reframe it in my brain more effectively. And that's where it's so important we choose the right time to do that. Reflection only happens once somebody is back in what we call their window of tolerance. If we're trying to teach them during escalation, it's like trying to pour water into a closed bottle. They can't listen to you. They can't take any thing. It's like there's no point in trying to prevent a fire from happening when a fire is burning. We have to put the fire out first. When somebody is seen as at our worst, but still accepted us at our worst, or still accepted us when we've behaved badly, that's when it builds trust. Repair after an incident actually builds security. We went through that, but you're still here. We went through that, but you're still talking to me. And in attachment theory, Bowlby showed that ruptures in relationships aren't damaging if they're followed by consistent repair. In fact, repair can make relationships stronger. It can build trust. So if we miss repair, the message left behind is one of shame, fear, or rejection. But if we get repair correct, if we do it correctly, the message is you're safe, you're valued, and you can grow. And that's what we're constantly looking towards, is that growth mindset, that building of mastery and self-esteem is one through, hey, we all make mistakes. It's how we come back from those mistakes that matter. We all get things wrong. We all have troubles. We all have strifes. It's not how many times we fall down. It's how many times we manage to get ourselves back up again. So when we're thinking about that post-incident, we kind of need to think about that regulation first, talk later. When we have a process. Part of our relational flow is we calm to connect, and then we go into resolve, correct, and then record, reflect. And it's in that order as far as from the incident to the point of reflection. We need to make sure we don't rush the debrief or the reflection. We need to wait until emotions are settled and the person feels safe. Now, in things like trauma recovery models, sometimes in the early stages of a relationship, in the early stages of trust building, the person may not feel safe to do that. In the stabilization period, where we're building somebody's safety, their concept of who they can and can't trust, straight away, they may be too intense and too much shame associated with talking about anything they feel they might have done wrong. They'll deflect the shame away. And there's no point in trying to reflect. We have to build trust before we're able to go through reflection time with somebody. But we also need to wait until they're completely calm. Not 5 minutes later, not half an hour later, just when we recognize that things are settled. And remember, we need to make sure we keep it relational, not an interrogation. Right, why did you do that? What were you playing at? There should be no condemnation. And why is a really difficult question to ask, as many of you who've done training with me will know that I refer to. So we can refer to that really hard. Why don't you tell me what went on? We want to focus on feelings before facts as well. Dan Siegel refers to it as we name it to tame it. We want to help them to recognize the emotions they were feeling at the time. Help them to recognize how they're connecting their behavior to their feelings. When you felt like this is how you acted. So how can we better recognize these feelings to then help you to change the behavior you choose in that moment? You look frustrated and that happened. Does that sound right? Is exploring with them to kind of, you were feeling this in this moment and this caused you to do this, right? So we can then reflect back with them. We're curious with them as far as their feelings to behavior are concerned. Then we can explore the impact and alternatives. So what happened and how did it affect? How did it affect others? How did it affect you? And what do you think we could do differently next time? I remember a friend of mine had a situation where she got called for one of her lads had done something that scared her. It scared her because it was a behavior that he did that could have been really dangerous. It could have been detrimental, and it seemed to be behavioral rather than emotional. And I could see that she was angry. She was going home and she was angry. And that anger was masking her fear. I get that 100%. But she was ready to go home and confront her son. The babysitter called, go home, confront the son, and be ready to tell him off, to shout at him. And I stopped her. I just asked her to go home and rather than tell him off, focus on reflection, focus on repair. So she just went through these kind of questions, which are, tell me what happened. And what were you feeling at the time? What did you hope would happen? What could have gone wrong, or how did it affect others? So what could we have done differently next time? Now, this lad kind of talked through this with her, only young lad, 7, 8, 9, talked through it with her and gave his reasons, gave his perspective, said what he could do differently next time. And they ended up, when I asked her the next day, how did that go for you? She sort of said it was really nice, actually. We just talked for a while. In the end, it ended in a really nice hug and it was good. I said, what would have usually happened? If you'd gone home in the state you were and you'd gone home and confronted, what do you think would have happened? Well, he would have shouted and I would have got angry and I would have ended up sending to his room. And then I would have felt the mum guilt for the rest of the evening because, I lost my temper and now I've disconnected from him and he probably would have spent the evening miserable. And now in both of the incidences, I don't know a guarantee of which one would have changed the outcomes more likely, whether shouting at might have stopped that behavior from ever happening again. Maybe, but I'm pretty confident, I do know, that the way of building trust relationship, that when I need my mum, she's there, is going to far more likely improve behavioral outcomes than shouting and screaming. We also need to be able to do this ourselves. We need to role model it. We need to be able to repair ourselves and reflect. And I have a few frameworks that I teach to organizations that should be following. So whether staff or parents, we should be reflecting back after this as well. Because guaranteed, we didn't do everything right. We didn't do everything wrong either, but we should be able to reflect back and go, hey, what can I learn from that? How can I improve on that? What was I feeling at the time? Is there anything I need to address? And again, that shows us that we're learning and we're needing to be, it's an element of humility going through that journey. So we use a principle called the perform debrief. And the perform debrief, the P stands for we just prepare for the debrief. So we choose a time and a place that feels okay for the person. And it should be a person that they feel comfortable with as well, whoever that is. And then we're going to explore what happened. And we're exploring what happened from their own words. So it's just a tell me what happened. Why did you do that? And we don't disagree. We just let them tell their version of the story. We may need to kind of reflect back and maybe, just hold some bits to evidence and stuff like that. But generally, we just need to let them tell their story. Then we can reflect back. So your kind of feelings and context, what happened. So in situation X, you felt Y. Okay, so we're talking to them about, so it sounds like, this happened and this happens. We're just making sure we're clarifying and we understand the situation properly. And then we're feeding back in a very clear. So in a situation X, you felt Y and this caused you to do Z. And that then resulted in this consequence, or this impacted because of consequence X and Y. So we're exploring the connecting between them, their feelings, and the outcomes, and then the consequences that happened as a result of that. To help them explore that. Would they prefer those outcomes to be different? What would they prefer to happen? So then we can explore, so what are their options for the future? What could you do next time? So this lad who acted out related to the mum, when he was asking, what could you do for anything? I could have called you. I could have sent you a text message. I could have gone outside and screamed at the top of my voice. I could have gone to my room and listened to my music, or just explored other alternatives, which means he's being empowered to make different choices next time, rather than being told, you should have done this, you shouldn't have done that. He was the one figuring things he could have done differently next time. And once we've then created that options for the future, then we're going to review the plan. Talk to them about how we're going to do this, how we're going to support them, how we can help them to improve their choice and outcomes, or what they could do differently next time, and just really cement that. And then the final stage is how we're going to move on. The M of perform is how we move on from there. Have any of you ever had a situation where maybe you acted in a way you felt slightly shameful or embarrassed about, but then you had to walk into a room of all the people that saw you behave that way? Did that fill you with joy or anxiety? Sometimes that moving on and getting back to normal routine is something some people will need help with. What if somebody makes a comment to you? What are you going to do? How are we going to make amends? And not how are you going to say sorry? Just How are we going to make amends? How are we going to make it better? How can we rebuild these relationships that maybe we've affected? So it's always a case where we're coming from a place of growth. Now, I know some of the objections like, we don't have time for repair. But if you don't make time for repair, you'll spend more time managing repeated incidences. Repair reduces reoccurrence. You will save yourself time in the long run by taking proper steps in the moment. If I had a fire in this room now and I just put it out and then walked away, I shouldn't be massively surprised when the room is burnt down tomorrow. Because I should have been looking at what started that, what we could do differently. How can I make that sure that never happens again? Okay. One is they won't listen. They will when the time is right. Wait for calm and wait for them to feel safe. That may not be the first incident, second incident. It could be us to build trust. Wait for calm, keep it short, and make it safe. I know some people feel like it's letting them off. Let's say I had an individual who, let's say, acted out and ended up breaking some things. And I sort of said, look, let's get out of here. Let's go for a walk. Let's go to the shop. We'll go and get a bit of a snack and then we can have a chat about it when you feel ready. Now, some people are going, oh, that's rewarding negative behavior. My objective is to put out the fire. The reflection is where we explore what could we do differently? How can we learn from this? Remember, if I'm role modeling and I just instigate negatives, punishments, consequences, well, what do they think is the right thing to do when the world doesn't go okay for them? Same thing. Instead, if we're exploring emotions, we're helping them to better understand themselves, if we're improving our understanding of them through these conversations, isn't that always going to improve outcomes? Who listening wishes more people understood them? And if more people understood you, do you feel that you would be happier and more content in your life? We're all screaming out for some connection of some description. We wish people understood when we said something, or what our motives were, or why we did what we did. So shouldn't we give opportunities? If we want to lead by example, we give people the opportunities. So this week, don't just focus on stopping behavior. Focus on what happens after. Make repair a non-negotiable part of your process. And this, whether it be with your child, whether it be a loved one, whether it be whatever, how are you rebuilding? How are you having a conversation afterwards? But remember, no shame, no blame, because trust isn't built in calm. It's built in recovery. Just because the calm is over, it's about how we're going to make this, how we're going to work this together. So I want you to think of your last incident. What message did your repair or lack of it leave behind? Thank you for listening. And if anything in this episode gave you a new lens, then please share it with a colleague, a family member, or somebody in your team, because behavior management or understanding other people isn't about avoiding storms. It's about how we rebuild once the clouds pass. See you next time.